Hi, everyone. It's Jessica Drummond here from the Integrative Women's Health Institute. And I am so thrilled to be here today with Brianne Grogan and Casie Danenhauer. And we are just going to chat all about what they have been up to in the last couple of years. They are brilliant students of ours at IWHI who have graduated and gone on to do amazing other things. And, really these guys are lifelong learners. So I'm just going to introduce you to each of them because so many of us are just like that, right? We are lifelong learners and we, continue to learn new things, gain new skills, gain new certifications. And sometimes it's challenging to put it all together. But let me show you what these guys have done with it. So Casie Danenhauer is a doctor of physical therapy and a yoga instructor. She's the owner of Enlightened Physical Therapy, which is conscious care for pelvic health. So she really combines that yogic philosophy of mindfulness that we also learn in the Women's Health Coach certification and brings it to pelvic health in Santa Monica, California. She's also the founder of Retreat to Your Root, which is a yoga for pelvic health retreat, which she holds throughout the US and internationally. So she has a fair amount of experience running retreats. Her mission is to empower women and men through pelvic health education, mindfulness-based practices, and one-on-one pelvic care. Her practice maintains a balance between Western evidence-based medicine, science, and holistic concentrations of the physical, emotional, psychological, energetic, and spiritual systems, which interestingly enough, we're getting more and more science to back up what a lot of these systems have known for a long time. Casie's approach to conscious care aims to help her clients live more mindfully and have more abundant health and joy through their pelvic health. Brianne, who is currently living in Germany, has over 2 million views on her FemFusion Facebook or FemFusion Fitness YouTube channel and a 5-star reviewed book. Dr. Brianne Grogan is a respected voice in the field of women's health and wellness, and she describes her YouTube channel as the home of core and pelvic floor friendly fitness. It's loved by viewers because of her down-to-earth and compassionate approach. And that's so very true. You make pelvic floor and core strengthening on your YouTube videos so much fun. So welcome to both of you. And Casie, I want to start with you. Talk a little bit about how you made the leap from being a more traditional based practicing physical therapist to doing so much in the world of retreats.
Yeah. The timing of when I was taking your program was huge. I was going through major burnout at my previous job, and the content of the health coaching program obviously deals a lot with as yourself, the provider, of how you're showing up for who you're working with. Mm-hmm. And so I'll never forget, at some point in a lecture somewhere, you said, find what feels good and then do that more. Mm. And that has become a really important mantra for me, and something that I share in the clinic all the time, and then also in my groups. And really what it came down to is I wasn't feeling good. And so I took some time off, and I actually went on 3 different yoga retreats and gave myself a period of time. And then I also kind of came out of that and said, okay, this is my time to figure out what exactly feels good and how I can continue doing my career with it being fulfilling rather than draining. Because I love what I do, and I love pelvic health, and I love working with men and women like that. And so what came out of the retreat, my personal retreats, were, wow, like I could totally do this. And this is such a cool way to have an impact, a lot more than just a one-on-one in the clinic. It's reaching a group of people all at once. And that's been really, really great in my workshops that I've been leading and in the retreat setting. And then most importantly, a big theme through the health coaching program is this: as women, the tend and befriend idea. Mm-hmm. And so fostering community and building just holding space for a group of women to share and to talk about, because it doesn't have to be anyone with pelvic floor issues or dysfunction, just opening up space as women to talk about our pelvises and our bodies in general has been so ultimately fulfilling and like rich, meaningful experiences. So that's kind of how the retreat was born. And the retreat that we're doing together, Brianne and I, is a spin off the Retreat to Your Root, which Retreat to Your Root is really pelvic centered. Rooted in Wellness is a much more broad look at women's health. So I'm really excited to kind of shift gears a little bit.
And so it sounds like that the container of the retreat and the kind of intensity of having women together for a somewhat more extended period of time, whether it's a day or a weekend or, 4 or 5 days, do you see accelerations in their sort of wellness gains by creating that kind of container?
Absolutely. Yes. On multiple levels. I always am nervous when I'm starting these retreats. The day one, you don't know what the group dynamic will be, but I always have to laugh. And also just like my heart explodes, because as soon as we do the opening circle and we start going around and people start sharing why they're there and what they want to gain, it's like this beautiful recognition of the women across the circle that like, wow, I am not alone in this. And it gives me chills every time. And even if I didn't lead any content, just providing space for people to share about issues that are really, taboo and full of shame and fear, just creating that container itself is healing. And then depending on the person's background, either they're going to gain something from the yoga that we're teaching, from the lectures, like the anatomy, physiology that we're teaching. And then honestly, a huge piece of it is the time spent around the dinner table or the breakfast table and the conversations that are happening, even when I'm not there as the leader, but, just women getting to know each other and hearing each other's stories.
Absolutely. And so, Brianne, you've touched literally millions of women throughout the world because you've built a very friendly community online platform. And I think through your book and through your videos, it's very relatable for women to start in even a virtual way, feeling that community. How have you found that?
Yeah, I really found that community feel grow as soon as I decided to really niche down and really be loud and proud about the fact that my channel is related to healthy core and pelvic floor. So I really am focusing on this part of the body, and I'm really making it a space for people who have issues with this part of their body. Before I was really, nothing has really changed. I've really always been focused on that, but I was more just a regular fitness gal out there who happened to be a physical therapist as well. But really honing in on that, I think, gave people kind of a shared purpose and a shared, we're all in this together kind of feeling. And, they're all there because they have at least some kind of interest in that part of their body. And so that, I think, was the biggest thing for creating community, was just having a central purpose, which we're trying to bring to our retreat as well. Just that, again, it's not just about pelvic health, as Casie said, but it's going to attract people that have some interest in that part of their body and learning more about that.
Yes, absolutely. And I think often when we're starting out as new health coaches or trying to pull together all of these hats we wear as physical therapists and fitness professionals and yoga teachers and health coaches, that it can feel like we actually do know how to help women in so many different ways that it's hard to focus. It's like, I don't want to just focus on pelvic floor, then I'm missing all these other people I can help. And yet you end up reaching more people, I find, when you do commit to that level of focus, which is really hard for many of us who are curious and do wear lots of hats and know we can help in a lot of different ways. So just knowing that both of you have this expertise in core and pelvic floor starts the conversation, but it doesn't have to keep it there necessarily.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think that's where it's been fun to collaborate too, because even though we are both pelvic specialists, we each have really separate approaches to that too. You know, I'm on the more yoga based side, and obviously the one-on-one internal work and stuff. Whereas Brianne is, you know, we're going to be doing dancing and more of the fitnessy side. So even within a niche, then there's been this beautiful opportunity to collaborate with people like Brianne and Dusty and Miller on my last retreat, where we all have something a little bit different to share on that.
Yeah. Absolutely. So tell me more about what this particular retreat is going to focus on, what your plans are. I'm excited about this.
Go ahead, Brianne.
Okay. Yeah. Well, first of all, I just have to say that I'm so excited to have Casie as my co-leader. She's somebody that I don't know. I think I actually reached out to you, Casie, from an article that Jessica had shared because we were both in the, program together. And I started following Casie's work and just really liked her. I just liked her approach and everything about her. And I thought, this is someone I want to work with. So it's really cool. Just yet another aspect of, Jessica, your program, and just, it's neat to not limit yourself just to your work. It's nice to reach out and kind of connect with other people and not feel competition or some kind of weird spirit like that. It's just, we're working together and just having some fun. So we are bringing our passions together. We're going to be splitting our days up. So there's going to be at least 2 days that are solid off time. Because although I've never led a retreat, that's this long. Mm-hmm. I've led smaller kind of workshops, but I've never led a 7-night retreat. So I've been to retreats though. And I know that with all that together time and all of that just input and information, you need some downtime. And so we're building in days of downtime so people can just do their own thing. They can just hang out, or they can go surfing. There's lessons that they can take and activities they can do. But then the scheduled days that we have lined out are really pretty full of information. We're going to start off with yoga or movement, fitness type class, essentially. And then we're going to do essentially a workshop lecture where there's going to be more of an educational component. And then we have our meals in there and a little free time. And then after dinner, we're always going to have kind of a wind down yoga session, meditation. So it's really, that's the general big picture of it. It is pretty scheduled, but there will be plenty of downtime. And also we're going to go through the chakra system. So the first 4 chakras is sort of our focus. Mm-hmm. Each day is going to have a different focus. So root chakra, second, third, and then culminating with the heart chakra. That'll be where we leave it. So we're building in a little bit of the yogic wisdom, a little bit of the chakra system, a little bit of the just general fun fitness, and weaving it all together. I think it's going to be awesome.
Absolutely. So when women come to something like this, it's kind of a commitment. It's 7 days and you're hosting it at a beautiful facility in Morocco. Is that right? Mm-hmm. What are the dates?
July 28th through August 4th.
Okay. So start planning now. I'm going to post all the details in the comments below or in this post. But when you make a commitment to bring yourself to this container, as Casie and I were just talking about, what are some of the things, Casie, that you see women really come away from? What do they get from this? They get that connection. And what else do women, come seeking, and what do they leave with?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it kind of goes to who shows up. So mm-hmm. What I've found is that there's kind of the patient crowd. So people who are either my patients or my colleagues' patients who are knowledgeable about the pelvic floor because they have issues, mm-hmm. Or some sort of dysfunction that they've been working on with someone. Then there's the crowd that is maybe more in the yoga world, or if not, maybe just more like spiritually minded, who are interested in things like the root chakra, the energetics of talking about the root and our pelvises and the divine feminine and sort of that piece of it. And then there are the providers. So I've been really lucky to teach my colleagues in this type of setting too. So other physical therapists, sex therapists, physician, so everyone's kind of coming for a different reason, but self-care is really the common theme. And so whether it is just, oh my gosh, this is the first week I've had alone in 7 years from my husband and my kids.
Yeah.
That in of itself, even if they don't show up to any of the lectures.
Right.
But what I think people are most surprised about, and going back to what I was saying before, is really just like having now lifelong friends. Like I have Facebook groups for the women for each group who has come. And it's so nice to see people continually sharing resources and just occasional, hey, how's everyone doing? Checking in. And there's this intense bonding you have about sharing with, your history of painful sex or endometriosis, where, people really walk away feeling very supported. And I remember my first retreat, there was a hot tub. And there was a woman who hadn't taken a bath or been in a hot tub for years because her doctors had really instilled fear that these will, cause infection. And it was so beautiful to see how the other women were just supporting her and like trying out being in the hot tub and like offering to bring her water. And, it's just being seen and heard, I think, and the connection is really the biggest piece that people are walking away from.
And I would imagine that if you're in this profession, if you're a wellness professional, if you're a physical therapist, a yoga teacher, a physician, having this collaborative experience simply in your being as a woman can be a place of rest for you and a place of just opening to a different kind of holistic care, because you start to see that, women that, as you said, you can kind of divide the women in the groups in these different categories, but really all of us have these, we're all patients sometimes, we all have the answer sometimes, we're all exploring our own spiritual sides sometimes. And I think there's a level of vulnerability that you get in containers like this, where we get to let go of the labels and connect just as women.
Yeah. And I had the pleasure of being invited to do 3 days of content for a group of yoga teacher trainees. So these were just women who had signed up for yoga teacher training. They didn't know about me or the pelvic floor. But here I am coming in with 3 days of like my retreat to your root content. And so these were people who didn't even know they needed or wanted the information and didn't necessarily have any reason to seek it out. But once we got the conversation going, as women, we all have something, whether it's been cysts or painful periods or, oh, well, my doctor just told me that was normal, or, we all have stuff. And so just even to a group of women who doesn't even know they need or want the information, it's been so cool to see how that's unfolded as well. So people who, brought their friends to the retreat, where the friend was like, well, I'm just coming to support you. Actually, those have been really meaningful moments.
Yeah. And I would imagine, Brianne, that you hear, because you are so visual, you're so seen online, that people kind of come to get to know you and they start to realize, I'm sure you hear from them and they start to share how the work, just doing fitness, thinking in a little bit of a different way, from that kind of divine feminine root and from just honoring your core and pelvic floor. What are women saying to you that you might expect to see in this upcoming retreat?
I think it's just the opening their eyes aspect, saying how they've never thought about this before, but now that they have, they're never going to not think about it. They're never going to not think about this part of their body as something really, some people take it to the realm of sacred and, more meaning, feeling it in that way. Other people just literally the physical aspect of, oh my gosh, I didn't even know there was, help for this type of condition, or, everyone I know has these issues, but no one talks about it. Like Casie said earlier, still a lot of shame, a lot of taboo, a lot of all of this, a lot of people who've been shamed by healthcare providers who they have issues and they've been left to think that it's not a big deal or it's just something that everyone has to deal with, that kind of a thing. And so, yeah, I just think that once you crack that lid off, it's like Pandora's box in a beautiful way. And I think that I hope that, I know it's built community from my end. And I know that some of the people that are in that online community have then felt comfortable enough sharing very personal details with me. And I'm hoping that opportunities like this retreat and maybe future, who knows, will be a really cool way to actually physically connect in person, because the online, typing out your story and that kind of thing is one thing, but it's so different to actually see a person and to just be in their presence. It's all the difference. Like I said, I've been to retreats and I've followed people online and I've gone and been in their presence, and it just makes such a difference to actually be with them in person. I love it.
And I think it establishes that connection, as Casie was saying, that you follow then later, right? So your Facebook groups really do know each other, yeah. and I think they'll find that both of you, who I've obviously met with in person, are exactly as you are right here. And so it's not going to be some strange, because sometimes, we meet the people that we've seen online and it's like, so, finding you for real, being very similar to how you are online, and then establishing the connection between them and you, but also the container of the whole group, it builds a relationship that's a much easier to sustain long-term, because you're talking to people online who you actually know. Mm-hmm. And I think the other thing that I wanted to mention, before we wrap up, and I'll give you some time if you want to talk about anything else, but when you're deciding to go on a retreat like this, you don't even have to be planning for a very particular outcome. As you said, sometimes we just need, we haven't been away from our husbands and kids for 7 years, or we've been working really hard for 6 months or a year or 5 years. And to just step away and put yourself in an environment where the entire experience is designed around, feeding you nourishing food and having you go to sleep and being out in nature and separating you from your devices a little bit. These kinds of things are just healing simply because of you've made a decision to put yourself in that space.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yep. I think it is. It can be a very big commitment to commit to a retreat, to commit the money and the time. I think more than anything, it's the time and the planning. But I just always think it's that you are committing to yourself and you are committing to, let's just have this adventure and let's see what comes of it. And just that openness is huge. I've found myself more than in these breaks that I've taken, more than any other, self-help book exploration. And I've read them all, I've found myself in these moments that I take to myself so much. It's just been incredible. So I'm so excited to actually lead this and hopefully give that experience to somebody else.
Now, let's talk a little bit about the logistics, right? Because I can hear right now women talking themselves into it and out of it. Like, well, I have children and a job, and how can I leave my child? And I know Brianne, you took a recent retreat where you left your son for quite a while, right? Like a few weeks.
It was a month.
Tell me about a month.
2 months long retreats. And so, I am lucky in that my husband was able to, we live in Germany, so we don't live by any family. But luckily my husband was able to be the person who just took over the house for one of those trips. And then for the other trip, we did actually have to fly my father out to come and stay. But that was great. He was able to interact with my son and they had a great time. So, it is, like I said, it's a decision and it's a commitment, especially when for everyone. But I think when you have kids, it does change it even more. But I don't know. I find that when I do it, like I said, I come back a different person. And for me, it's always been in a good way. And my husband sees that. And so he's willing to step in and step up.
And would you say that your son sees it too?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I've had to miss some events that are sad. And I had to miss Halloween once, and then I had to miss Mother's Day on the other one. And in both cases, there was a little bit of sadness from Julian, or from my son, and that was awful. It was awful. But in the end, I know that he knows. He actually said to me just the other day, he said, "I'm really glad you're one of those moms that does things." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he goes, you do stuff, and you like go out and you're out there and you're busy and you do stuff. You don't just sit around. And I thought, whoa, that's huge, because I feel so guilty so often for being very busy and being sometimes distracted. So this was a beautiful, like, just a breath where I said, he is seeing it the way I'm hoping he sees it. And even if he sometimes is a little sad about something in the moment or whatever, I always try to make up for it, try to balance it out. And ultimately, I think he sees that I'm growing as a person, and we grow together rather than me just focusing in on him. I think he appreciates that, even at 10 years old.
Yeah. And my kids are 14 and 7 now. And so I leave them more and more. And I think that, there's a level of independence that they get. There's a level of inspiration they get. And yeah, in fact, I think it was last year, I literally missed every person in my family's birthday. I was like either at a conference or I was teaching somewhere or whatever. And this year I came home from Australia completely jet lagged on Halloween. And so I completely understand that. And yet my kids are so independent, and I see them being so sure of themselves, really, even as a teenager. And I think there's some real benefit to them, clearly to me, because I think whenever, as you said, you can learn a lot from a book, you can learn a lot from an online program, you can connect with people virtually. And if you have an infant, maybe that's the right thing to do, or maybe it's not. It really depends. I actually did do some of my health coach training when Kate was literally an infant, but I had a lot of support from my mom. So it depends on your support network, it depends on your resources, but yet at some point there's, I think, such a benefit to you that really spills over to everyone in your life, whether you have kids or not. It spills over to your work, it spills over to your family, it spills over as inspiration to some of your friends who may be holding themselves back because they've never seen anyone do anything like this.
Yeah.
And I think it's worth noting that it does, we are in a very privileged sphere to be able to retreat, both personally and to hold these retreats. And I think that's worth noting for sure. But also looking at, why and how we've created the space in our life to be able to do that. And a lot of that has to do with just what we're valuing. And similar to what both of you were saying, I have found I usually will go on a retreat or take a course with an intention. And sometimes there's that aha moment. So perhaps someone's coming to the retreat specifically because they've been working in pelvic floor PT for a year, and they're reaching a plateau and they're looking for something else. And so maybe there is that intention, but what I found is really you walk away with this really subtle, like new undercurrent of like vibration that you're living from. So I just returned from a 10-day silent meditation retreat, and there were lots of moments, but in general, I feel like I'm just coming back to my work in a different way, coming back to my friends in a different way. And for me, that kind of growth is really of utmost value. And so that's why I keep investing my time and money into these sorts of things.
Yeah. And I think, in a sense, you can align this, or you can equate it to, you can choose to go to graduate school, you can choose to go to college, you can choose to go for a bigger job. You can choose different choices that you make to create this privilege. Sometimes comes from just trying things that you might be scared of a little bit, or you might not be sure. And as you said, there's a vibration around, as you build bigger things in your life, which allow you to then build bigger things. And I think when you're doing that, you're not always just doing it for yourself. You're actually sort of doing it for your entire community, because you're showing people what's possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And as you said, if you're particularly struggling with something, whether it's a pelvic floor issue or pain, or, just something maybe psychosocial that you're struggling with, or a relationship challenge, or even, there are times when I'm trying to write a lecture, or I'm trying to, write something. Sometimes it comes to you more quickly. You have these like breakthroughs when you create this space. It's like, oh my gosh, my headaches went away. Or, oh my gosh, the idea came to me so easily. All I was doing was walking on the beach. And we don't really give ourselves that space very often, because the kind of core idea is that to achieve something, whether it's a health breakthrough or a work breakthrough or a parenting breakthrough or a relationship breakthrough, you've got to do all this work. You've got to muscle it. And honestly, it often comes much more easily if you just shift.
I completely agree with that. Yeah. So sorry, Casie. Yeah, I agree. Just like stepping back, sometimes going to sleep and stepping back can make all the difference. But yeah, especially if you can step back for a week or an extended period of time, it really, it can make a huge difference. Sorry, Casie, I think you were going to say something.
I was just going to say, we talk about that a lot in the retreat content, and in that we live in a very masculine kind of framework world where we have to do this at this time and get this and this done. And in order to get healthy, we have to do all of these things. Whereas the what you had just described of the kind of being open to receive is a very feminine concept. It's more cyclical versus linear. And that's something, obviously that was a thread in at least the content during the program that I was in. With you.
Yeah, very much.
So that's a big piece of it. And then also just, I've done so much studying of chronic pain science over the last few years. And without going into too much detail, the research is showing create safety in the nervous system to optimize healing and pain reduction.
Absolutely.
And this is just a week full of ways to do that. Even if it's just being there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're exactly right. That the container of you're in a safe space with other women, you're being fed nourishing food, you're being encouraged to sleep, you're stepping into nature, you're doing yoga and breathing and movement and being encouraged to connect with your body in a very safe and supported way by two professionals who, have doctorates in their training and have done advanced certification and have wide ranging certification. So you guys are hosting this retreat. Again, just your presence is creating safety in the nervous system, and the space that you've mindfully chosen. It's exactly right. I mean, this is what the science says is the key to healing pain. And so when people are struggling and they're taking more medication and trying to do things and exercising harder and they are getting stuck and it's not helpful, this is the kind of shift that is really evidence-based.
I think it's wonderful. I just have one last little thing to say on this subject is that in Germany, where I live, I'm not part of the German healthcare system. We have kind of an interesting situation, but I happen to know that many people in Germany get prescribed rest. They get prescribed from their doctors to go get some rest, to go to these saunas and essentially spas for a period of time to recover their health. And I think that that's so incredible. It's speaking to exactly what you're saying and what retreats can offer. So I love it. I love it.
Well, thank you so much both for being here today to share your journeys since graduation. It's good to see you. And, I'm really excited about this because I think it shows what can happen when people just look at how they can, as you said, Casie, what makes me feel good that is in service. And then the idea of networking and collaborating within our community is just huge. I mean, I emphasize that from the very beginning because I think it's essential. We just all have different perspectives, no matter what the letters are behind our names. So thank you so much for inspiring all of us and for being here to chat with me today. And I just appreciate you. Thanks.
Thank you, Jessica. So great to be here.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great day, and we'll be in touch soon. And I'm going to keep an eye on your retreat.
Yay. Bye.
Bye.